Okay, well, why don't we get started here? We have everyone. I think we're ready to go. So, Shalom, I'll let you take it away. Thanks for being here, everybody.
Yeah, did everybody make intros?
Not
Not
yet.
yet. We've waited for you.
Yeah, we waited for you because you're the host.
Well, perfect. Well, let's do this. Let's start by welcoming everybody to the Athletes Connect. I'm so glad everybody can make it. Today's topic, we're going to chat about, teamwork on and off the field. Now, I understand everybody, all the listeners, and everybody could resonate to this topic and to this subject. So I'm excited about this jam-packed hour that we're going to have together. There's a lot of great content. And before you know it, our hour is going to be up. So I guess a couple of housekeeping stuff like questions. We're going to roll some questions out. So we want this to be an engagement with everybody that's listening. So we're going to ask you to use the chat function when we ask questions. Keep them coming. Let us know what sports you play. Let us know what with the summer virtual games that are coming up. Let us know what events you're participating in. We would love to. I guess as we discuss what teamwork means to us and to each other, would love to know more about our listeners at the same time, if that makes sense. So without going further, I want to introduce our panelists on here. So we got Daniel, Marcia from Special Olympics, we got Kara from Team USA, and we got Erica from Best Buddies, and of course our wonderful hosts Leah and Rachel. So why don't we start with Marcia and Daniel? Do you want to give us a quick introduction? Daniel, we'll go with you first, and maybe just chat about what part of Washington you're from, what sports do you play, and just quickly touch on, just touch on what does teamwork mean to you as we start to open up discussion. Go ahead, Daniel.
All right. What's up, viewers? I'm Daniel Barrich. I've been involved with Special Olympics for 8 years. I've done sports such as softball, soccer, basketball, bowling, and flag football. I live down in Vancouver, Washington, and I feel like what kind of teamwork feels like to me is just whatever team you're with for so long, it's just everyone's in sync and they know what they're doing. And it's just any team I'm with, it's always just a good opportunity for like teamwork as you give like camaraderie and stuff to other players.
That's wonderful. Marcia.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marcia Barrett. I am from North Redmond, Washington, the northernmost part of Redmond, literally. And what sports almost haven't I done at this point? Let's see if I can remember them all. Bowling, tennis, gymnastics. I've done a little bit of cheerleading. Back when I was a Girl Scout, I did some equestrian. Soccer, I'm a unified partner. Basketball, I'm a unified partner. Let's see here, softball, flag football, bocce ball, and my main sport, swimming in particular. I'm an athlete coach in that. And to me, teamwork is not about me. It's about the we for the me in that way, in that you try and bring out the best in everyone and bring out the best in yourself. And also it's about sportsmanship and about your attitude to whatever game or sport that you are playing, because sportsmanship is one of the core driving values of teamwork.
Marcia, that's beautiful. And we're going to touch a little bit on that later in our conversation. You touched on so many great points that's going to resonate within our discussion today. So well done. Didn't you miss one sport though? Didn't you do athletics as well?
Yes, I did back in 4th through 6th grade, or 4th through 8th grade. So
you do it all.
Caught you on that.
He did, only because, but it's one of those things where it's hard to remember everything. I've done a little bit. In elementary school and junior high, I did every sport available in the area.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll get to know more about that in a sec.
Yeah, way before you joined Shalom, our Q&A bar has been flooded with questions right now.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get to that. So we got to rip through this and we'll get to our Q&A. Erica, do you want to go next and talk a little bit about yourself, Best Buddies? Can't wait.
Sure. Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Erica Brody with Best Buddies. I am in West Seattle, which is now the island of West Seattle. So maybe you could come visit sometime. A little bit about Best Buddies. We are new to Washington, so you may not have heard of Best Buddies before, but we actually are a sister organization to Special Olympics, because Special Olympics was started by Eunice Kennedy Shriver, And Best Buddies was started by her youngest son, Anthony Kennedy Shriver. And while we're new to Washington, we are a 31-year-old organization, and we focus on friendship, so social inclusion for people with and without intellectual and developmental disabilities through one-to-one friendships, leadership development, inclusive employment, and inclusive housing programs. So we believe, I'm a strong believer that the core of teamwork starts with friendship, and I know we'll get into that a little bit later.
Nice, Erica. Now, just quickly for our listeners, is Best Buddies, is that for all ages, from youth right up to senior demographic? You want to just touch on that really quickly?
Yes, great question. Best Buddies is for all ages. We start as early as elementary school. We have programs in elementary, middle schools, high schools, colleges. We have an adult friendship program, and we have buddies in our program that are in their 60s and 70s. So
Wow.
Truly lifelong.
Doesn't that speak to our topic today, that teamwork and
Right?
friendships, right? Wonderful. We'll get to more of that here in a second. Kara, I've known you for what, maybe in and out for the last maybe 6 to 7 years through our time in San Diego, training for the Olympics. You're a 3-time Olympian. Geez, there's so many in between there that you might want to get into, but tell us a little bit about, you're from Washington, I believe. There's some ties back to your homeland here, and you now live in, is it Colorado?
Colorado, yes.
Yep. So tell us a little bit about your journey. Tell us a little about yourself and how we got to here today.
Sure. So thank you. And yes, the Chula Vista days were phenomenal. I love still visiting there. I was actually supposed to go to Southern California right at the beginning of the coronavirus shutdown. So I was happy to not get stuck there, but I love that place still so much. Colorado Springs is my home. I live here with my husband of almost 6 years. He is a native of the town that we live in. So we live like near his family, and that's like a different kind of teamwork, right? Like I kind of had to get used to those new family members and new team members when we moved to his hometown. But I'm originally from Vancouver, Washington, Daniel.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vancouver native.
Woo! And I'll actually be spending quite a bit of time in Washington in August, so I'm really excited about that because I'm going to have like one competition in Idaho, and then shut the season down and spend a lot of time with my family. But I'll drive all the way back there. But yeah, teamwork. I see it working in so many different areas of my life. Not only on Team USA, but in my marriage, in my family, in my friendships, and it's just super important. So what that means to me is that you have different strengths than someone else on your team, and other people bring stuff to the table that you can't. So recognizing that is super important.
That's awesome, Kara. And I mean, one, to know that you're a Washingtonian, you're a native. We're excited to have you on board. We're excited that you're bringing some of your influence and your experience to share to our listeners. We just want to let you know we appreciate that.
I'm super happy to be here. So I'm flattered. Thank you.
Perfect. So, I mean, we'll transition into our first question regarding teamwork, and we'll start with you, Kara. Javelin, right? So you're an American world record holder with javelin. You're a 3-time Olympian. I mean, that's no easy task, right? And could you, on the note on teamwork, on the notion of teamwork, could you share a little bit about, I mean, it's easy for people to think javelin, geez, that must be a single sport, like an individual sport where it just requires your own skill, your own self. But clearly it isn't. Could you share a little bit more about that? Like what, from a teamwork standpoint?
For sure. So something that I got used to really quickly in an individual sport, I played like everything growing up, Marcia. I was basketball, softball, volleyball. I was a swimmer in the fall every year. It's still a really important part of my training. Like I miss the pool so badly now that like I can't go to the pool. But through all of those experiences, I had some really hard team experiences that like I should have learned better how to work with other people. I just wasn't mature enough to do that, like to have the hard conversations to get to a point of understanding. So when I had like natural talent in the javelin, it was really exciting for me to have control over my results in a way that I never did in those frustrating team experiences. But through kind of the journey of like injuries and having different kinds of coaches and all that stuff, and like having to figure out how my journey worked best for me, I really saw that there was absolutely nothing that I could do to have an effect on someone else's results in a team, in an individual sport, like javelin, like the field events. So like everybody has their chance to perform and be great, and there's nothing I can do to like make you do worse and vice versa. So there's absolutely no reason to be a jerk in the field of play. And it just turns into this like super fun, like sportsman-like, just competitive but friendly atmosphere. And that has translated to such cool international friendships.
Right.
So you mentioned like the American record. I'm the American record holder, but one of my now very good friends from the Czech Republic is without question the best ever javelin thrower in the world on the women's side. Her name is Barrett. She's from Prague, and like I now get to go regularly to Prague to train with her, and like I had a sleepover at her house because she's my actual friend. And it's just like the coolest thing to have those resources, but not think of them as resources. They're just friendships. But she has made me a better javelin thrower, like by being her friend and getting to train with her. So it's just like a little different take on teamwork.
Yeah.
Because you're the only one that can affect your results, but there's no reason to not help someone else because everybody has different strengths again. But yeah, it's just a super fun atmosphere.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. What a great story. I mean, I heard things like relationship, the power of relationship, that could last, you know, not only impact you on the pitch or on the field or on the court or on the track, but even off it, right? Sport is more than a sport, right? Before we go to Marcia and Daniel, did you ever once feel isolated, and how did you deal with that?
So whenever I start to feel isolated, it's a pretty common thing for me, actually. I kind of have this like roller coaster every season where I start to feel like I'm the only one I can rely on.
Yeah.
But in last year, in 2019, I had started the season pretty well. I started working with my very good friend of 14 years. Her name's Dana Lyon. She's my coach as of the 2018 season. And then my friend Jamie, who's been my strength coach for 11 years, is my other component. And Shalom knows him from Chula Vista.
Yes, I remember Jamie. Yeah.
And Jamie drove me to my wedding. Like his wife was my matron of honor. So he's not only my coach of the longest time of my entire life, but he's like one of my very close friends. So I can just like be really honest with him about how the training is going, and give him really honest feedback in that adventure. But in 2019, I spent like a lot of time at the beginning of the season alone in Europe, like traveling from meet to meet and competing. And I like didn't have good cell phone service or internet. And so I was just like feeling all alone and not like myself. And then after our national championships, I just decided I'm going to just have a great time the rest of the season. Like the only events I had lined up were Team USA events. So I wasn't wearing my like regular season uniform. I was wearing USA on my chest, and I was going to be surrounded by teammates that I know really well. And one of them is actually my current roommate in coronavirus, a fellow javelin thrower, Ariana Ince. She drove from San Diego, where she lives in Chula Vista, like 16 hours straight at the beginning of the lockdown to come and live with me. And it's been 3 months, you know? And so
what a good friend.
Oh my gosh. And Pan Am's 2019 was the first time we were roommates last year at a competition. And for the first time since 1979, we were the two American athletes of the 3 medals like on the podium. So 2 American women medaled. I got gold, and she was bronze. And from there, I was like, this is what I've been missing, like a teammate.
Wow.
Wow.
A teammate that I can rely on and have a great time with, but also be respectful of, again, like her space, and that she has her own opportunity to be great. And from there, we were roommates again in Belarus, where I won the competition, and again at World Championships, where I got 5th place, the best American finish ever. So that just transition of like recognizing that I felt lonely and I was feeling self-reliant, and I just needed to like let go and again let those relationships in, just propelled me to success. at the end of the season.
Wow, that's great advice. What great advice for our listeners who a lot of them play individual sports, a lot of them play team sports as well. Taking away, especially if it's easy to feel isolated during, the current climate that we find ourselves in, right? And so what I heard there was leaning onto our coaches, for our athletes, it's leaning to our volunteers. There are input leaders councils there for that reason. And which we're lucky to have Daniel and Marcia here now. So speaking of Marcia, tell us, how important is support network to you and all the sports that you play? And how does that tie into teamwork?
Your support network is everything, especially like your family in particular.
Yes.
I've been blessed where my father was not only a teacher, he was also a coach his entire career. So to me, sports is like a language, in that it's more than just being able to connect with teammates. You can connect with other, people, whatever field of play, whether it's the pool, whether it's the pitch, whether it's the court, whether it's the slopes, doesn't matter. It's a universal language, and you're all there because you love it. And that's something that I've grown up around, and teamwork kind of goes hand in hand in that way, especially in swimming, because you have individual events and you have relays, just like athletics, track and field. But the difference is there's a little bit of a difference in that instead of having a baton to pass back and forth, you have to be able to time your coming in stuff, and so your starts. And so it's a little different, but it's the same sort of concept. But that I love relays, and that's where teamwork is the most important, because you are forced to rely on 3 other people besides yourself at any given time, and you're only as strong as your weakest link. And thus, so if you know each other well enough and you trust each other, there is no weak link.
Right. So what one advice would you give to our listeners right now regarding that?
Attitude is everything.
Nice.
It's all about sportsmanship, because in life, this is something my dad taught me from about 7 years old. In life, life is the ultimate game to be played. And in life, it depends on the day, whether you'll win or lose, whatever. That doesn't matter. It's about your approach and your attitude to the game itself. And thus, so if you have a positive attitude, whether you've won or lost, you brought out the best in everyone else and bring out the best in yourself.
That's fantastic, Marcia. What great advice. Daniel.
Yes.
You play quite the amount of sports yourself. Everything from flag football, basketball, soccer, you name it. So you named a lot of team sports, and we got a lot of team players that are listening online right now. So what can you accomplish as a team that, in your opinion, that you can't accomplish on your own? Like, what are some things that, like, you need to rely on your team? Are there certain things that you feel you can accomplish when you feel like you're as a team versus you on your own? Like, what sort of feelings do you get from team component sports versus the individual sports?
It's just to be ready, every time I play a team sport, besides just the practices and stuff, one thing all my coaches before have told me was just to be ready, as well as my teammates, because I've had experience with being a team captain before, and team captains are not only supposed to help lead their team, but also motivate them and
Yes.
Help lift their spirits when they're not playing very well, because not all the times athletes have good performances. Sometimes they have bad performances, other times they have good. But most of the times for all those physical kind of games that I have, it's like for all those team sports, it's pretty much you have to have the mentality and the kind of focus to really be in sync with your teammates. You all have to be ready. You all have to be in sync. You all have to lift each other up and literally doing the best ability that you can. And what you accomplish out of that is if you pretty much not get frustrated with your teammates and actually start focusing better, you start dominating on the field, where it's like most of the times if teammates or teams get frustrated with each other, they usually lose and stuff like that. And it's like you have to have that mentality to just keep your cool in pressuring situations, even if it may seem frustrating.
Right. And that's not always easy, is it?
Mm-hmm.
So on that note, Daniel, like, have you ever had to deal with like that disappointment of like letting your teammates down?
Yeah, there have been times where I felt like I've let my teammates down, but they've pretty much just told me just to keep my head up. And it's like, it's not just one person, it's like a whole team. And it's like, if one person doesn't play very good, it's like sometimes it can lead to flaws in like playbooks and stuff and frustrations for other players. But even though they played through the frustration and stuff,
yeah.
And I've also had coaches on every single team that I've played on. They've always said, like, even though Special Olympics tournaments, you always play for those medals, and it's about inclusion, having fun. And they always say, no matter what the score is, just pretend like you're there for fun, and that every score is 0-0.
Yeah. Crucial. Carol, just quickly before we go to Erica, like, what are some actions that you've had to take when you saw your teammates down, right? Like someone who's a part of your team, who's, you know, trying to help you accomplish, get that gold medal or that world record. When someone didn't pull their weight, what are some actions? Because I know that we're all a part of a bigger team, right? Whether it's on the field or off the field. What are some actions that we could take as teammates to be better teammates in that regard when we see our teammate down?
I always think, like, I'm fairly introverted as a person. Like, I have a hard time, like, being really, you know, outspoken about my feelings and stuff, like, right as they're happening. I need a little bit more time to, like, process. And so as a teammate, I try to be respectful of that. Like, maybe someone's also like that. And so I don't necessarily want to force them to talk about it right away, but just, like, be present in where they are and just kind of maybe pat them on the back or give them a high five or like walk with them in some kind of like silence. Because I also want to respect somebody's wishes to kind of marinate on like what they're going to do better in the future. Like, that's a really important part for me to do, like that initial analysis of like what went wrong. And then beyond that, developing the friendship, like saying, hey, like you want to go get some coffee, or you want to come over to like read in the yard in a hammock, you know, and just kind of just spend time together and develop that friendship, so that maybe that's when you talk about what happened on the field and they've had a chance to think about what the future might hold. So
that's what I've done with my teammates.
Nice.
On my councils, I try and tell my constituents who I help represent that I'm your go-to councilman in that way. I want you guys to be able to approach me at all times. And that comes from my my sports background in that way, and that I try and do that for everybody.
And that goes back to your sports as a language, right? That you see somebody's body language and you're like, okay, let's be respectful of that for a second, because everybody's different in how they express their feelings.
And for some gestures that you've done like that, Kara, I've done that to my teammates. Like, there have been times where some of my teammates have come to practice a little bit flustered, and it's like, when I saw that, I'm like, okay, I need to give them a little bit of space to cool off, and then talk to them when they've had enough time to cool off, and then everything just goes very well.
That's awesome. I was going to bring up a very mean example, Kara. I was going to ask a mean question, like, have you ever beaten one of your teammates from Team USA to get to the Pan Am Games or the Olympics? And what do you say to them when you beat them to qualify? And like, you want to encourage them, like, hey, but I beat you, but you know, like, what would you say? What would you say in that regard? Because I'm sure here we're gonna verse each other. We're gonna, you know, especially the virtual summer games, or once our world opens back up, we're gonna play against each other. And you know, sometimes, I mean, not to say that there is we don't do everything to win or lose, right? For the most part, we play because it's fun and friendships, and we're highlighted. But just for this specific example, what have you done?
So I have a really easy out on that, actually. Like, a lot of times when we're qualifying for teams, you have to throw a standard to be able to go. So there aren't that many women in the United States that have that standard. So I have like a really easy, like I know that I did my job going in, and they didn't necessarily, so they know that too, and that makes it a really easy conversation. But in terms of like teamwork, say at World Championships. So Ari, my roommate that's living here now, she is one of my best friends in the entire world. And we decided that like being roommates would be such a fun experience, like all over the world. So last year alone, we were roommates in Lima, Peru, Minsk, Belarus, and Doha, Qatar. And we've like been all over the world together, which is so fun, but she's also my competitor. So what we did last year was talk about it just a little bit beforehand, that like we were going to be in separate qualifying events. We each have to go and do our job. And I said, and this is my marriage philosophy as well, I know we're not married, but when one member of the team is doing well, the team is doing well. So
Wow.
like we're both gonna, you know, do our own thing, and the chips are gonna fall where they may. But like if you do well and I do not, I'm going to be proud of you. Like I will remove myself from the
Powerful.
situation and like deal with my own emotions, like before I'm not going to put that on you. Like I will be so happy to support you in the final if I don't make it. And so just addressing it beforehand, if you have the opportunity to, can go a long way.
That's powerful. And what great advice for our listeners, and even for myself. You know I personally take from that. So thank you for that. Erica, you brought up in your introduction about best buddies, that friendship and leadership was an important component to best buddies and teamwork in general, right? Can you share a little bit about what type of rewards come from those who embrace it?
Yes. So I was taking notes on what all the panelists were saying. I've been looking in the chat, and there are some words that have stood out to me. So support network, building relationships, trust is a huge one. Coaching, respecting one another, really knowing one another. And then one that I saw in the chat was empathy. So I think that when you think about teamwork, it means all of those things and more. It means really, you know, I think the one that stands out to me the most is trust, really being able to trust those around you and those that are on your team, both on and off the field. And that's something that I have seen being built in really tremendous ways through friendships that have formed in the Best Buddies program. One of the things that I think is coolest about Best Buddies is that you're becoming a friend with somebody who is different from you, who has different challenges, who has a completely different perspective on the world. And I think everyone on the panel can agree, when you step on the field with your team, that applies to all of your teammates as well. Everyone has a different perspective. Everyone comes from a different place in life, has a different background. But as a team, you really need to get to know one another and figure out how to trust one another, even though you're all different. And I think that building that through friendship, and I heard Kara talk a lot about how the foundation of being able to establish really great teamwork is becoming friends with the folks on your team and building friendship. So I guess that's just something that has really stood out to me in this conversation, and something that I love seeing come out of the friendships that are formed in Best Buddies is that deep trust that can be so hard to build with people who are different from yourself. But if you really open yourself up to getting to know someone on a deeper level and getting to know them through a friendship, that can open up a world of difference in terms of teamwork and success and accomplishing the things that you set your mind to.
That's awesome, Erica. In your opinion, how important is it, to outside of athletics, how important is it to feel like you're a part of a team?
Oh my gosh, incredibly important.
Yeah.
I heard the word isolation being thrown around too, and I think everyone is feeling very isolated right now.
COVID.
Right? Yeah, like we can't leave our houses, right?
Yeah.
I can't leave the island of West Seattle because the bridge is broken. We're all feeling isolated in very different ways.
Sorry, that's not funny, by the way.
Yeah, no, yeah. But it's incredibly important to have that support network of people that you can count on, that you can go to, that you can just call up and say, I'm having a really bad day and I just need to talk to somebody, and they can talk you through it. And you have that trust established with them to be able to work through it. And I think Marcia talked about this as well, that you know, she was talking about her family being an incredible support network for when you're on a team and you just need some extra support with guidance and resources. But that, I think that can apply broadly beyond just family. Having a support network off the field and having people that you can go to build you up, but also give you constructive criticism and things that you can work on, that only just makes you a better teammate.
That's fantastic. I love that advice, and I'm sure our listeners can resonate with that. Daniel, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just about to say too, like, I've had some family members that have been my kind of support through this too, because ever since I was young, I've just had a dream of wanting to be an athlete, because I've watched a lot of professional athletes play on TV and stuff, and I've grown up having a passion for basketball. And in 2012, I actually met 3 professional basketball players of the Portland Trail Blazers.
That's awesome.
And then just recently in 2018, I met 2 Seattle Seahawks, and that just so happens to be the Griffin brothers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Shaquille and Shaquem.
And they're fantastic players, aren't they?
Yes, they're very good. And people have said, like, Shaquem is an inspiration, even though he's only got one hand. He's been an inspiration.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Everyone always has their inspirations and stuff.
Yeah. We got about 2 more questions. We want to leave some time for Q&A, and we can see the questions they're coming through. They're coming through thick and thin. So, Marcia,
yes,
a question for you. Can you describe a disappointing team experience that you've had? That
it has to do with varsity swimming. But yes, this is keep in mind, I didn't get diagnosed until later teenage years, so I grew up having my autism, but not knowing that it was there. So I was just expected like anybody else. So by 9th grade, I made the varsity team, which is awesome. Not a gentleman's letter, but a full letter. But we had this one swimmer on our team, Ellie Wyant, and she was our best backstroker on the team. And I mean, she was just unbelievably good, you know, kind of like that natural talent, as Kara was saying earlier, kind of thing. Well, it was during one of our swim meets. I believe it was either against Lake Washington or East Lake Washington. And what happened was she was doing the 500-yard freestyle. And in high school, that's the hardest event. That's 20 laps. And she was also good at that. Like, even though that wasn't her best event, she was wicked fast nonetheless. And of course she wins the event, but she throws this huge tantrum because she didn't get the exact result that she wanted. Whereas I did the same event, and even though I got 6th, dead last, I dropped 37 seconds at the time, which is a lot of time, and I shattered my previous personal best.
Wow.
And thus, so it was kind of like, you know, experiencing 2 for the price of 1 right there. And what was really neat was in getting my personal best, I also was just, you know, kind of trying to bring her back up and get her over her kind of attitude that she was going on at the time. My coaches knew right away that I was going to be a leader by my senior year. So
that's fantastic. Daniel, last question. Virtual summer games are coming up in August, right? We got a bunch of listeners who will be competing in that. What would be some last bits of advice that you could give leading? I mean, it's, probably most have started training already, but what would you say are some some last bits of advice based on our discussion today before we open it up to the floor? What are some last bits of advice for our listeners regarding their preparation for the virtual summer games coming up?
Right. Even though this is virtual and it doesn't feel the same because we're always used to this being in person, just have fun doing this, because this is a very good competition that we get to have fun being at home and just getting to train hard to keep us ready. Because if we don't train at all for this whole year of a lockdown because of this disease, it's like, how would we be better for next year or so? And basically all I got to say is, for these athletes, just train hard, do the best that you can. We're all here to have fun in this competition, no matter win or lose. Keep your head up. You always do your best. And if you just fall short of any endeavors, just keep your head up, and you always got to know there's always the next time.
Daniel, that's beautiful, man. I love that advice, especially going into this virtual summer games. Yes, it is new to everybody. Yes, this virus is a pain, but it's a small, hopefully a small amount of time that, nothing that we as athletes can't overcome, right? To our ability to adapt, to figure it out. I'm sure you guys have figured out your training regime, ways to get creative. And it's only gonna, I think, do us better when we come out of this, right? Look at Kara pointing out her little at-home gym. I'm sure she's got creative and doing new things, right, Kara?
Right. Well, and I was going to say, speaking to what Daniel said, like, for me, it was a really fun opportunity to prove to myself that I love the game, right? And I love the training, and I love making myself better. So that was like right at the forefront of my mind when coronavirus started. Like, I've said this for the last couple of years, that I just love training and competing for me. And what a perfect opportunity to like see if that's true. And thankfully it is for me, but we all just want to love sport and like do it the best we can. So you can do that by yourself and have a great time.
Fantastic. Leah, do you want to take a moment, or Erica, have a look at our Q&A, and do you guys want to pick some questions that you think might resonate with our listeners? And geez, the floor is theirs.
Absolutely. I think there's a question that Lizzie has asked that goes along pretty well with what Kara was just explaining. So her question was mostly about how is everybody dealing with not getting applause right now? And I think that fits in well to the question of how are you handling not being with your teams right now? What are you doing to keep yourself on track and stay training? I think it's a really cool point that Kara spoke to earlier, that even participating in an individual sport, there are still elements of teamwork there, and those are the things that we can really be focusing on right now while we're not physically with our teams, but we can still use our support networks and use those friendships that we've built. So if anybody has things that they would like to share about what they're doing right now to deal with this situation, that would be great.
Marcia, it looked like you were excited about talking about not getting applause.
Yeah, well, it's kind of part of that. It has to actually do with part of this is that being a swimmer, if you want to know a little bit of a background of swimming, we thrive under pressure and we love noise. The louder and noisier it is during a swim meet, the better. So if anything, this has been a good challenge in a opposite sort of effect. So instead of being able to go out and compete and be in that element that we love and thrive under so much, it's literally going to be a test. And if anything, I like a good challenge. That's what swimming is all about, is about pushing yourself past anything and everything you ever thought possible. And it's about goal setting. So for me, I've set daily goals and weekly goals. And so even though I may not be in the pool all the time, that doesn't mean that I'm not still cross training and I'm getting my stamina back up. I've got a little bit of ways to go, but endurance is easy. Stamina is hard.
Well, and in the javelin, I don't know if anyone's watched like YouTube videos at all, but you can watch my American record on YouTube. It's there. It's my maiden name, Kara Patterson. But when you have a field event, like the clapping that happens is like a slow clap. It's like a rhythmic, like to get you down the runway, and then you throw the javelin.
Like golf?
Yeah, well, kind of, but like a everyone's clapping together, and it gets faster and faster and faster and faster, and then you really implement. So that's what happened on that throw, and that had never really worked for me in the past. But that whole season of 2010, like it really worked for me to have that extra motivation, like in a competition. So for me, like actually coronavirus is not that different as far as like what practice looks like. Like it's very quiet. It's very normal for it just to be me and my coach. And reserving that like applause for the competitive opportunities is like very normal. So it's really interesting. There haven't obviously been as many competitive opportunities, but I'm very used to like leaving the applause like on the competitive runway. So I don't miss that.
Yeah. Spectators for Special Olympics athletes, they're always the best kind of standing ovation you could get, because you're basically representing your own region and stuff. And then I've also seen some opposing supporters actually being good sports and also supporting the other team too.
Awesome.
Like basically what's known as mutual support.
And sports is a
Important.
universal language, so
Yeah.
it's all about mutuality.
Yeah, and even in the chat bar, I saw a question from McKenna for Kara. She wants to know the proper form for throwing a javelin in the
Ooh.
Olympics.
Okay, so if you watch that American record on YouTube, you'll see close to it. But what you do is you run straight forward. You're holding the implement in your hand. It's a 7.5 foot long spear, and there's a handle in the middle of it. So you run straight forward, like sprint forward, then you turn sideways and pull the javelin way back behind you. And then you stop on your left leg and throw it over the top of your body as far as you can. So different people have different length approaches, but it's all about acceleration into that block leg and then coming up and over it.
For those of you interested in watching the video, we can include it in an email after.
All right.
And then you'll go down a rabbit hole of javelin YouTube videos, and it'll be great. Yeah. It's a great question. It is more difficult than it looks, as with all sports. I think we can relate. Our job is to make it look easy, right?
Yep.
Like Michael Phelps.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got it easy. And yet for all the sports I've done combined, I've probably almost surpassed him by now. I've got like, for all my sports combined, I've got about 23 gold medals, and 7 of them have come from winning state games.
That's awesome, Daniel.
Well, speaking of Michael Phelps, eat your heart out. I've got more than 26 golds just in swimming alone in the last 8 years.
Really? How much do you have, if you
That's
remember?
awesome.
At my parents' house here, I have about 112 currently across the board.
Wow.
Dang.
And
That's
about
pretty
a
impressive.
third of them are from swimming.
Oh,
Where
boy.
do you
So,
find the
Kara's
time?
impressed right now.
I'm not kidding you. I love sports literally to that point.
This is
So,
my only one.
hey, you've got a bigger one than any of mine.
Pretty
So
cool.
so there you go.
Yeah, even
That's
the
awesome, guys.
Olympic medals that you have, it beats out the Special Olympics nationals medals.
And
The nationals medals are like this big, Kara, but
Yeah.
it's
Have-
not
the
that big of a
World
size
Games are
compared to your
like-
Olympic medal.
the World Games are about this big, and then the actual ones are like one step up from that.
That's
Like,
crazy.
Yeah.
So,
It's pretty
So
cool.
the actual
So-
worldwide games, they're bigger than the Olympic ones.
Like this.
just a little bit bigger. It's like
Yeah.
it gets exponentially bigger, but they are pretty cool.
Hmm.
They're very cool. All right, guys, I'm going to keep us going just because we are running low on time here. Erica,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you if you know whether or not there are many Best Buddies members who are also Special Olympics athletes. I know we had a few people in the chat mention that they were a part of Best Buddies, but I think it's such a cool overlap where, you know, those friendships that you build in Best Buddies are so similar and are carried over to the mentality that you use on the field with your team. If you know a little bit about some of that overlap.
Yes, absolutely. We have many, many, many Best Buddies participants who are also Special Olympics athletes. And we have lots of unified chapters that also have a Best Buddies chapter at their school. So folks play sports together on their unified team, and then they also are matched in Best Buddies friendships in the Best Buddies Club. So there is tons of overlap. And it just makes it so much more fun, right? Because you get to be on the field playing sports with all these awesome people on your unified team, and then you get to go have a karaoke party or a pizza party, or in COVID times, you get to do a virtual dance party on Zoom with all of your teammates. And as we were talking about earlier, building those friendships off the field just helps you become a stronger team on the field. So it really does go hand in hand. And I would say this is a rough estimate, but at least 75% of our Best Buddies participants are also involved in Special Olympics.
Wow.
That's awesome. And as I said in the chat, we'll make sure to send out some more information about Best Buddies to everyone here who's on the call, so that if you are not involved with Best Buddies but you're interested, you can learn a little bit more and connect with Erica to be a part of it. It's a really cool organization. Kara, I love seeing your dog there. There's another support system, a good teammate to have around.
She's very needy, so I always have to feature her on these calls.
I got my dog too.
I saw him come in.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I have one more question here. This one was from Christina. She said, how do you handle disappointment if you don't make it? And I think another part that I would love to just tack on to this question is, how do you use your teams and help your teams if you are dealing with disappointment?
Do you mind if I grab this one? If anything, I deal with, as team captain, and leader, I have to deal with disappointment kind of often in that way, in that if I don't get let's go back to a swim meet. Let's say that I'm doing the 200 meter IM, and let's say I don't quite get the time that I was hoping for. Instead of being disappointed, I use that as a motivator. I flip it on its head, because I know that sportsmanship is key and attitude, and thus so you got to approach it from, rather than being, like, oh man, I didn't get it, be more of like, I didn't get it this time, but that doesn't mean next time. I'm coming for you. So just think of it that way. Instead of like trying to beat yourself up, look at it as an opportunity for literally your next meet. And that's how I approach not just swimming, but that's what helps me, not just in sports, but also in my daily life too, is being able to, especially in these times with this coronavirus, it's actually one of the best things is to approach it from a daily point of view, just day by day. And that's how I've been able to stay really positive, not have cabin fever, and still be able to somewhere or another help out in the community.
That's
awesome,
exactly
Marcia.
what I would say, Marcia. Yeah, I actually have a story about like a competitor maybe not being sportsmanlike in a time when I needed them to be, and
I
like
would love to hear it.
Okay, and dealing with disappointment. Because in 2012 at Olympic trials, I was like in fantastic shape. I'm going into this meet, ready to make my second Olympic team. And on my fourth throw, I tore my ACL.
Ooh.
So huge bummer. And I was winning at the time, but I didn't take any more throws. And then this girl beat me on the last throw, which is fine. But like, I just had a catastrophic injury as well. And she didn't shake my hand, didn't do anything, And so it was just a really hard experience to like be very injured and not win, but like still make the team. It was just like a very strange mixture of all that stuff. But I learned exactly the lesson that you did through that injury. Like having that surgery was so shocking to the system, because you just all of a sudden, like your body doesn't work the same way that it always has. And so the ability to like, have those little freak out moments, but then be able to pick yourself up and recognize little daily victories that eventually get you like back to the shape that you were in. And then beyond that is such a hard lesson that you sometimes need those really difficult things to go through to learn. But if you can see the positives in them, you're so much better equipped for everything else in your life.
I think from what I got from it, it was that in that moment when you tore your ACL, that it kind of gave you a new perspective of where you were to go in your sports career, right?
Yeah, and you don't know that it's gonna come back, right? Like I've never faced this problem before, so all I can do is depend on the people that know more about it than I do, my personal, like my physical therapists and my coaches, and then see if I am making progress, and when I recognize it, celebrate it and do it again the next day. And also like seek other opportunities at the same time, because I'd only ever been an athlete until that point, and I all of a sudden was like, I need something else to focus on if I don't have this athletic ability. So let me get a cool digital camera and start taking pictures of stuff. And I went to grad school, so going back to school and having something else like to pursue with the support of everybody that was excited about those new opportunities was just awesome. So disappointment can turn into so much more than like you had before.
That is really, really cool. In case you guys
really cool.
heard about that, that is like the most like epic thing I've heard in a while and stuff. That's actually inspiring, I've got to say. I'm
Pretty
actually
sure
somewhat
you said
inspired.
it first, so yeah.
If anything, now it feels though I want to go and tackle like like go and tackle whatever it is that's coming down the pipeline for me.
That's awesome. So we just have a few minutes left here. I have one last question I would like to ask, and we'll have to be pretty quick, and then just a few little announcements at the end. But my question for all of you is, how can we be a team to each other, to our whole Special Olympics community, to our friends, our teammates, during this challenging time that we are all facing, living in a pandemic? We're stuck at home. We can't do the things that we are normally used to be a good teammate. So do you have other ideas or suggestions to everybody listening on how to be a good teammate?
I have a quick one. A really quick one is we're doing it right now, right? We're connecting. And I would encourage that this is going to happen every other week, every other Thursday. So the next one is on the 30th. I would encourage our teammates, as we're going into the virtual summer games, let them jump on and let's talk about some of the challenges that we're going through together, and let's face them together. That's what this is about, and it'll be a great opportunity for us to help push each other through these times. So that's just a quick one on my end.
Set goals, whether especially little goals, whether they're daily or weekly. Don't stop with that. It'll help with your mentality.
I love it. Daniel?
Set up your own kind of training reminders on days that you're not practicing. Just set your own kind of daily workout routines.
That's a great one.
That is.
Stay hydrated. Drink water. Very, very simple, but I always forget, and it makes you feel so much better. Drink water.
Yeah, and I think maybe once we're done, I think one thing that all of us panelists should do is, as a way of still staying in contact with each other, is just stay connected through social media.
And Daniel, I learned that lesson in quarantine. Like I never thought of social media that way. It was always just pressure to post stuff about my training, and it's become so much more social media. Like actually take the time to instead of just like a photo, like comment something that you have been thinking about that person or whatever. Like use it as a communication platform instead of just like a place to show off. It's been really fun to use it in a different way.
Nice.
That's awesome. Erica, any last thoughts on being a good team member?
Yeah, I would just build on social media as a great platform to talk about what I was going to say, which is lean on your friends and make new friends. Even though we are all staying in our houses right now, this is a perfect testament to making new friends. I know I just became Facebook friends with Marcia, so I'm looking forward to staying connected.
That's awesome. Thank you guys so much for being here. The one last thing I would like to say, another way to connect and stay a part of Special Olympics, we mentioned it earlier, but the virtual summer season, I'll send the link out in an email, and it was in the chat earlier, but a great way to keep up with your training, keep your mental health strong, and to stay connected to your friends and our Special Olympics community. So I hope everyone will be able to join on that and join us on our next Athletes Connect panel in 2 weeks.
Yep. I just want to say thank you to all our panelists, Erica, Daniel, Marcia, Kara. You guys have been fantastic. I know our listeners have taken so much away from this, and we're excited, and I'm sure we'll stay connected. So thank you again.
Absolutely.
So happy to be here. Thank you guys for having me.
This was a very humbling experience, getting to do my first ever Athletes Connect, and if I ever get to be featured in any more, it's just a very good, humble opportunity that I'm definitely wanting to do this again.
I feel the
That's
same.
good to hear.
Thank you.
I'm forever honored that an idea of mine became such an inspiring webinar. I'm very humbled and honored. So thank you everyone for believing in me from the start.
Yes, this is an awesome thing. Thanks for all you listeners for taking your time to listen to our advice. And we hope that you guys can actually use some of that to make yourself better in sports, just being a good team player.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of your evening.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.